The 7-year-old boy walked into the security room, sat down in the head chair, and folded his hands on the table like he owned the building. Because he did. Kang Do-yoon looked at the 3 bodyguards standing before him, grown men armed, trained with combined experience that could fill a library, and said in the calmest voice a child had ever used to deliver a threat, "You will help us. Or Monday morning my father gets a call." None of them moved. None of them breathed. Welcome to Black Silk Stories, the home of Afro-Korean stories that hit different. Subscribe, drop a comment, and do not go anywhere. This is only the beginning. The Kang mansion sat on the edge of Seoul like it was daring the city to say something. 12 bedrooms, a private garden that rivaled public parks, a kitchen that ran 24 hours, and a security system that governments had quietly requested the blueprints for. Kang Ji-tae had built it for his family. Every corridor, every room, every locked door had a purpose. What he had not built it for was this. "We should make a list," Kang Ha-eun said, sitting cross-legged on the floor of the Triplets' shared playroom, her silk ivory dress fanning out around her like a small queen holding court. Her natural hair was twisted up with a pearl pin their mother had left behind. She had a notebook. She had already written 3 headings. "We already made a list." Kang Tae-hyun was hanging upside down off the velvet sofa, his navy-structured blazer somehow still perfectly buttoned. "The list is, we are bored. That is the whole list." "That is not a plan, Tae-hyun. It is the beginning of one." Do-yoon stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, watching the gate. He was wearing a charcoal mini-suit, no tie, collar sharp. He had not spoken in 4 minutes. His siblings knew better than to rush him. "We have 21 days, he finally said, without turning around. "Appa and Iyama are gone. The staff will let us do anything that does not involve fire or leaving the property." "What if it involves leaving the property?" Tae-hyun asked. Do-yoon turned around. "Then we do not ask the staff." The idea had not come from nowhere. 3 days before their parents left, Amara Sinclair Kang had been on a video call in her home office. Floor-to-ceiling glass, white oak desk, a wall of screens tracking 4 different markets. She was dressed in a structured black wrap dress, gold cuffs at both wrists, her locks pinned back in a crown braid that her sole stylist had spent 2 hours perfecting. Ha-eun had been sitting on the office floor doing homework. She was always there. Not because she was supposed to be, but because she liked the sound of her mother working, the low, firm voice the way Amara never raised it and never needed to. "The Cape Town Center is behind schedule," Amara said into the camera. "I need the revised timeline by Thursday, not Friday." "Thursday." She paused. "Listen. I understand the weather was a factor. The budget was not the weather. Thursday." She ended the call, glanced down, and found Ha-eun watching her. "Why do people always give excuses?" Ha-eun asked. "Because solutions are harder." "Do you always find solutions?" Amara picked up her coffee, considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I look for them until I do." Ha-eun wrote something in her notebook. Amara did not ask what. She had learned not to. That was the first seed. The second came from Tae-hyun, which surprised no one and everyone simultaneously. He had been in the back of the family car with his brothers, returning from their weekly taekwondo class, all 3 of them in matching white uniforms with black trim, though Tae-hyun had somehow already lost his belt, when the driver took an alternate route through a part of Seoul that the GPS usually avoided. Tae-hyun pressed his face to the window. The streets were narrow there, crowded in a way that felt different from the usual city crowded. A woman was selling food from a cart, layered in 2 coats despite the season. A group of children sat on steps outside a building that looked like it was tired of standing. A man slept on a flattened box with a newspaper for a blanket. "Do-yoon." Tae-hyun's voice had lost its usual bounce. "I see it. Do those kids go to school?" Do-yoon did not answer immediately. He was looking at the same child Tae-hyun was, a boy around their age, barefoot, eating something from a wrapper with the concentration of someone who did not know when the next one was coming. "I don't know," Do-yoon said. It was the most honest thing he'd said all week. Ha-eun had been looking too. She said nothing in the car. But that night she added a second page to her notebook. That was the second seed. By the morning their parents left, the triplets had already been awake for an hour. They stood at the top of the grand staircase in matching goodbye outfits, Ha-eun in a blush pink pleated dress with a white Peter Pan collar and white Mary Janes, Do-yoon and Tae-hyun in matching cream linen sets with cognac loafers. Amara had chosen the outfits herself the night before, which meant they were perfect, which meant they would be photographed, which meant she had already briefed the household photographer. Jite came down the hallway in a black wool coat, his presence filling the space before he did. He was not a tall man by international standards, but he was the kind of man that rooms adjusted for. His eyes, dark still, always calculating, softened the moment he saw his children at the top of the stairs. Yeah. He opened his arms. All three of them came down the stairs in a controlled stampede. Haun reached him first. She always did. Appa. She wrapped both arms around his neck when he lifted her. You smell like the airport already. I haven't left yet. You always smell like the airport when you're about to leave. It's a pre-airport smell. Jite looked at his wife over Haun's shoulder. Amara was watching with her arms folded, dressed in a caramel-toned travel suit, wide-leg trousers, a fitted double-breasted blazer, Bottega mules, her locks in a sleek low bun. She looked like a magazine cover pretending to be a human being. She gets that from you, Jite said. The observation skills, yes, Amara agreed. The dramatics are entirely yours. Taehyun was already going through Jite's coat pockets. Did you put snacks in here? You said you'd put snacks. Those are not snacks. What are they? Things that are not yours. Duyun stood slightly apart from the chaos, watching. When Jite looked at him, he got a small nod. Jite set Haun down and walked to his eldest by 4 minutes, a fact Duyun referenced with surprising frequency for a child, and crouched to his level. You're in charge. I know. The staff listens to Mr. Jaiwan first. I know that too. Duyun held his father's gaze. But Mr. Jaiwan listens to me. Jite searched his son's face for something. Arrogance, bluster. Found neither. Only a quiet certainty that he recognized because he saw it every morning in his own mirror. He straightened up. 3 weeks. 21 days, Duyun corrected. Jite almost smiled. Amara knelt and pulled all three of them into her arms at once, her gold bangles clinking against Duyun's shoulder. She smelled like oud and something warm underneath it, her specific irreplaceable smell that all three of them would spend the next 3 weeks quietly missing. Be good, she said into their hair. Define good, Taehyun said. Kong Taehyun. Okay. Yes. Good. We will be good. She pulled back and looked at Haun specifically, the way mothers do with daughters, a whole conversation in 4 seconds. Haun nodded once. Amar nodded back. Whatever passed between them, it stayed there. The cars pulled out of the gate at 9:14 a.m. By 9:17, Duyun had called a meeting. The security room was not somewhere the triplets were supposed to be unsupervised. This was precisely why Duyun had chosen it. The 3 bodyguards, Park Sungjin, Lim Cheol-soo, and Oh Dae-won, were already inside when the triplets arrived, having been summoned by a note slipped under each of their doors that read, Conference Room B, 9:30. Attendance is mandatory. The notes had been signed simply, Management. Park Sungjin had 17 years of private security experience. He had protected a former prime minister, 2 tech billionaires, and 1 international pop star who had tried to bite him. He looked at the note and felt something unfamiliar move through him. He went anyway. Lim Cheol-soo went because Sungjin went. Oh Dae-won went because he was 26 and still operating on the instinct that when something seemed wildly wrong, you showed up to confirm it. The 3 of them stood in conference room B facing Duyun in the head chair, Haun to his right with her notebook open, and Taehyun to his left eating a tangerine and watching everyone with the focused energy of a child who had already decided how this was going. We appreciate you coming, Duyun began. We didn't have a choice, Sungjin said slowly. Did we? You had a choice. You made the right one. Duyun unfolded a sheet of paper. We are going to the slum district. We need a driver and security. You 3 are our preferred team. Silence. Cheol-soo cleared his throat. Young master, your father is in Tokyo. Duyun did not look up from the paper. And will remain there for 21 days. During which time we have identified something that requires our attention. We saw kids like us, Taehyun said, tangerine segment in cheek. Except they didn't have anything. And we have everything. That's not fair and we want to fix it. More silence. A different kind. Oh Dae-won looked at the 7-year-old who had just said, That's not fair and we want to fix it, with a matter-of-fact tone of someone reading a weather report, and felt something rearrange slightly in his chest. Haun looked up from her notebook. Uncle Sungjin. You have a little sister. Sungjin stiffened. Young miss. She's in Busan. She's 12. You send her money every month. Haun's voice was not cruel. It was simply informed. If something had happened to your family when you were 7, would you have wanted someone to help? The room was very quiet. Sungjin looked at this child in her ivory silk dress with her pearl hairpin and her notebook, and understood with absolute clarity that he was not going to win this. We'd need a plan, he said finally. Diyun slid 3 printed pages across the table. We have one. They went on a Tuesday. The triplets dressed practically by Kong standards, which still meant Haun in a dove gray pinafore dress over a white long-sleeve white sneakers, her hair in 2 puffs with gray ribbon ties. Diyun and Taehyun wore matching dark olive cargo trousers with white fitted turtlenecks and clean white sneakers. Simple. Neat. Unmistakably put together. The convoy was 2 vehicles, deliberately understated. No house flags, no customized plates. Sungjin drove the lead car. When they pulled into the outer edge of the district, the street changed texture. Narrower, louder, layered with 100 different kinds of living all stacked on top of each other. Taehyun was quiet for the second time in recorded history. Diyun was taking mental notes. Haun had her actual notebook open on her lap. There. Haun pointed. A girl, maybe 8 years old, sitting alone on the edge of a drainage curb. She was wearing a school uniform that was 2 sizes too big. The hem fraying at the bottom. She had a small doll with no head that she was talking to with complete sincerity. Stop the car, Haun said. Young miss, the protocol is. Uncle Sungjin. Stop the car, please. He stopped the car. Haun was out before anyone could establish order. Daewon was out a second later, hand instinctively moving toward his jacket, then dropping when he registered that the threat landscape was a 7-year-old approaching another child. Haun crouched down in front of the girl. Hi. The girl looked up. She had sharp, cautious eyes, the kind that had learned early to assess first and trust later. Hi, she said after a moment. What's your doll's name? The girl looked at the headless doll. Sua. That's a pretty name. My name is Haun. I'm Yoonji. Haun sat down on the curb beside her. Her dove gray pinafore touched the concrete. Behind her, she could feel all 3 bodyguards vibrating with restrained panic, and she ignored them completely. Yoonji, do you go to school? A pause. Sometimes. What does sometimes mean? Yoonji picked at the fraying hem of her uniform. When there's someone to take me. And when I'm not too hungry to pay attention. Haun wrote something in her notebook. Not immediately. She sat with that answer first, let it settle into her the way her mother always sat with difficult information before responding to it. Then she wrote it down. Okay, she said quietly. I'm going to remember that. They spent 4 hours in the district. Jun spoke with an elderly man who ran an informal food kitchen out of his front room and needed a working stove. Taehyun, who had the least patience for sitting still, somehow ended up organizing an impromptu football game with 8 children and 3 bewildered bodyguards as goalkeepers. Haun moved from person to person with her notebook, asking questions and listening to answers with the full, unhurried attention of someone who had been taught that listening was its own form of power. By the time they returned to the car, the notebook had 31 pages of notes. That evening, spread across the playroom floor with room service noodles going cold beside them, they read every page out loud to each other. 150 children, Jiyun said when they had finished. That's our number. We focus there first. School support, food, basic needs. Then we see what else. How do we pay for it? Taehyun asked. Jiyun looked at him. Appa, they said together. Haun was already reaching for her phone. Wait. Jiyun put his hand on hers. We prepare first. We go to him with a plan, not a feeling. He will take us more seriously. Taehyun pointed at him with a chopstick. That is very smart and also very annoying. I know. They spent 2 more days preparing. Jiyun drafted the proposal in bullet points. Haun wrote the emotional case, the names, the stories, Yoonji and her headless doll. Taehyun, whose contribution his siblings had doubted until this moment, drew a map of the district with color-coded zones marking the highest areas of need. It was surprisingly accurate. How did you do that? Haun stared at the map. Taehyun shrugged. I pay attention. I'm just loud while I'm doing it. On the third evening, Hoon picked up the phone. Because ladies first. Because their father always said so. Jitae picked up on the second ring, the way he always did for his children, regardless of what room he was in or who was in it with him. My princess. Appa. Hoon's voice was warm and steady and completely intentional. We need to talk to you about something important. All three of us. A beat. The specific beat of a man who loved his children and knew, instinctively, that his wallet was about to have an opinion. Put me on speaker. Jitae was in a Tokyo boardroom when Hoon called. 12 men sat around a table that cost more than most people's houses. The meeting had been running for 40 minutes and was about to reach the part where voices were supposed to rise and someone was supposed to leave the room. Jitae had been looking forward to it. He picked up on the second ring. Give me 4 minutes, he said to the room. Not a request. He stepped out, closed the door, and leaned against the corridor wall in his charcoal 3-piece suit, French cuffs, onyx cufflinks, the specific armor he wore when he needed Tokyo to take him seriously. Speaker, he said. Hoon switched it. All three voices came through. Appa. Duyun's voice first, measured, deliberate. We found a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that already existed before we found it. We just didn't know to look. Jitae said nothing. He had learned, with Duyun specifically, that silence was faster than questions. There are children in this city, Duyun continued, who are our age and do not have food or school, or anyone building something for them. We went to see for ourselves. We took notes. We have a plan. We need funding. Another beat. How much? Jitae asked. Taehyun's voice. Enough to help 150 children. School fees, meals, basic supplies. Uncle Sungjin and Uncle Cheol-soo and Uncle Dae-won will run it on the ground because we watched them for 2 years and they are good people, Appa. Really good. Jitae closed his eyes briefly. His 3 bodyguards. His children had recruited his 3 bodyguards. Hoon. His voice shifted. Not softer exactly but differently weighted. Tell me what you saw. Hoon did not look at her notes. She had memorized what mattered. I met a girl named Yoonji. She's 8. She has a doll with no head that she named Suwa and she talks to it because there is nobody else to talk to. She goes to school sometimes, Appa. Sometimes. Because sometimes she's too hungry to pay attention when she gets there. A pause. I wrote her name down first. Because I think if you write someone's name down first, it means you won't forget them. The Tokyo corridor was very quiet. Jitae was quiet for 6 seconds. His children had learned to count his silences. Send me Duyun's plan. Duyun was already at the laptop. And one condition, Jitae said. No cameras, Duyun said immediately. No press, no public announcement. We know. That was already in the plan. Another silence. This one sounded different, something close to pride moving through it. And your mother? All 3 of them went slightly still. We start first, Taehyun said carefully. Then we tell her. Because if we tell her first, she will have conditions, Appa. So many conditions. And we do not have that kind of time. Jitae made a sound that, in any other man, might have been a laugh. Your mother, he said, is going to have opinions about this conversation specifically. We know, Hoon said pleasantly. But you love her, so you'll handle it. Jitae stood in that Tokyo corridor in his expensive suit, wanted in 2 countries for reasons his children would never know, and felt something in his chest go completely, helplessly soft. The funds will clear by morning. The project moved in silence. That was the part that surprised the bodyguards most. Not the scale, not the logistics, but how quietly 3 7-year-olds could operate once they had decided to. No announcements. No rehearsals. Sungjin coordinated with a local community elder Duyun, had identified from Hoon's notes. Cheol-soo handled procurement, school materials, food supplies, coordinating with 2 local NGOs who had the infrastructure but not the funding. Dae-won became, somewhat against his will, the person all the children wanted to talk to, possibly because he had the least intimidating face and had been a goalkeeper in Taehyun's football game. The triplets stayed involved in a way that was neither performative nor passive. Duyun reviewed every expense report. At 7. With a highlighter. Hoon returned to the district 3 more times and always went directly to Yoonji first. She brought books the 2nd time. A proper doll the 3rd time, one with a head. On the 4th visit, she sat beside her for an hour and helped her practice reading out loud, and neither of them mentioned the doll that had been replaced, because some things are understood without being said. Taehyun's contribution remained chaotic and irreplaceable. He had, within 2 weeks, learned the names of every child in their target group, organized daily after-school football in an open lot that Cheol-soo had quietly arranged access to, and somehow convinced a retired schoolteacher in the district to run weekend tutoring sessions by simply sitting beside her door every morning until she came outside and asked what he wanted. How did that work? Daewon asked afterward. People just want to know someone sees them, Taehyun said, peeling a tangerine. Same as everyone. Daewon looked at this boy. 7 years old, navy structured jacket, juice on his chin, and quietly decided this was the most important job he'd ever had. They told Amar on day 16. She was in Singapore. It was 9 p.m. her time, and she had just returned to her hotel suite after a dinner that had involved 3-course corrections and one very uncomfortable conversation about intellectual property. She was still in her dinner look, a deep burgundy silk column dress, diamond studs, her locks in a sculptured updo that her Singapore stylist had spent 3 hours on, when the video call came through. All 3 faces on the screen, dressed in their pajamas, coordinated because of course they were, cream sets with small embroidered initials on the chest pocket, Amar's own gift from 2 birthdays ago. She knew immediately. What did you do? She said. Not a question. Iyama. Haun smiled first, which was tactically sound. We have something to show you. They walked her through everything. Duyun with the budget breakdown, Haun with the names and the stories, Taehyun with his color-coded map which he held up to the camera slightly crooked and did not correct. Amara listened without speaking. This was something her children had inherited from her, the ability to receive information completely before responding to it. She sat on the edge of the Singapore hotel bed in her burgundy silk dress and she listened to her 3 7-year-olds explain, with receipts, how they had quietly launched a community empowerment project while she was on the other side of the world. When they finished, the silence lasted 8 seconds. Your father knew. Day 3, Duyun confirmed. And he didn't tell me. We asked him not to. Another silence. Amar's expression was doing something complicated, moving through several rooms before settling in one. Her children watched her with the specific attention of people who knew that the still ones were the most powerful. Yoonji, Amar said finally. The girl with the doll. Haun nodded. Is she in the program? She's in school full-time now, Haun said. She likes math. She's very good at it. Something moved across Amara Sinclair Kong's face that she did not try to stop. She had built a fashion and technology empire from a single idea at 23 years old. She had negotiated in rooms that were designed to make her feel like she did not belong in them. She had married a man whose world operated in shadows, and learned to stand in her own light, so completely that the shadows could never reach her children. She had not cried in a boardroom in 11 years. She cried a little now in a Singapore hotel suite in a burgundy silk dress, because of a girl named Yoonji who liked math. You should have told me, she said when she had composed herself. She meant it. But her voice carried something underneath the correction, the specific warmth of a woman who was prouder than she had words for. You would have had conditions, Taehyun said. I would have had structure. Iyama. Haun's voice was gentle and immovable. It worked. Amara looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she straightened up, squared her shoulders and became the CEO again, but the kind that only her family ever saw. The one who showed up after the emotion rather than instead of it. Send me everything. Every name, every number, every report. And when I land, I want to meet Yoonji. We'll arrange it, Duyun said. I know you will. She shook her head slowly. God help this world when you 3 are grown. It'll be fine, Taehyun said cheerfully. We're good people. By day 21, 153 children had been enrolled in school support programs. 47 adults in the district had received vocational resources and financial access referrals. The informal food kitchen run by the elderly man with the broken stove now had 2 working stoves, a weekly supply run, and a waiting list. No cameras had recorded any of it. The world found out anyway. It started with a teacher in the district who told a parent. The parent told a neighbor. The neighbor had a son who worked in media and who understood instinctively that the most powerful stories are the ones that do not ask to be told. He wrote a single thread on a community forum. No names, no photographs, just what had happened and what it had changed. By the time Jitae and Amara landed back in Seoul, the thread had been shared 40,000 times. By the time the family car pulled through the mansion gates, it had been picked up by 3 international outlets. By the time the triplets came running down the staircase in their welcome home outfits, Haeun in a yellow smock dress with white trim, Doyoon and Taehyun in matching ivory linen sets with yellow pocket squares, the story had a name the internet had given it, and that name was simply, the Kong children. Jitae stepped through the door and all 3 of them hit him like a wave. He held them all at once, which required some structural adjustment, and said nothing for a moment, his chin resting on the top of Haeun's head. Amara stepped in behind him. She looked at the 3 of them bundled into their father's arms and then looked at Sungjin Cheol-soo and Daewon standing at respectful distance near the corridor. She walked directly to them. "Thank you," she said, quietly, plainly, without performance, "for keeping them safe, and for saying yes to them." Sungjin's professional composure held by a narrow margin. "They didn't really give us a choice, Madam Kong. They never do." She looked back at her children. "They get that from both of us, unfortunately." The building was Jitae's idea. Amara designed it. A proper community center, 2 floors, a library, a tutoring hall, a kitchen, a medical referral station, a small courtyard with a football pitch that Taehyun personally approved in an inspection visit that involved him running the full length of it twice and declaring it acceptable. The naming ceremony was held on a Saturday morning. The triplets stood outside the entrance in their finest. Haeun wore a deep emerald dress with long sleeves and a high neck, her natural hair out in a full beautiful crown with a thin gold band across it. Doyoon and Taehyun wore matching black fitted suits with emerald pocket squares, their mother's touch, the color coordinated deliberately. They looked like what they were, children who belonged to a family that understood that how you showed up told people what you believed about the moment. Jitae stood beside Amara in a black coat and charcoal suit. Amara wore a long caramel wool coat over a fitted black dress, gold cuffs, locks down and loose, powerful and present in equal measure. Someone handed Haeun the microphone. She took it without hesitation. "We are calling it," she said, in a voice clear enough to carry across the courtyard. "The Sua Center. Not the Kong Center. Not anything with their family name. Sua. The name of a headless doll that a lonely girl had loved until someone came to sit beside her on a curb and write her name down first." Yoonji was standing in the front row. She was wearing a new school uniform that fit her properly this time. When Haeun said the name, Yoonji looked down at her shoes for a moment, and then back up, and her eyes were very bright. Haeun found her face in the crowd and held it. The 2 girls looked at each other across the courtyard. One in emerald and gold, one in a school uniform with a working hem, and something passed between them that had no name in any language, but that everyone present could feel. Taehyun leaned toward Doyoon. "I'm not crying," he whispered. "Your face is doing something," Doyoon whispered back. "That's just my regular face. It has never looked like that before." "Doyoon." "Yes. Stop talking." Global recognition arrived the way true recognition always does. Not with a single moment, but with a gathering of them. An international child welfare organization cited the Sua Center model in a published report. A journalist who had been covering grassroots community development for 20 years wrote a long-form piece that mentioned the triplets not by full name, not with photographs but with the line, "3 children decided the world needed something, and then they built it." That single line was quoted in 11 languages. Jitae read it at his desk and did not move for a long time. Amara had it framed. It hung in her home office below the wall of market screens, the only personal thing in the room that was visible to cameras during her interviews. No one ever asked her about it without her answering for longer than they expected. 5 months after the Sua Center opened, on an ordinary Wednesday evening, Doyoon was at his desk doing homework when his phone lit up. An unknown number. He looked at it, then at the door, then back at the phone. He answered. The voice on the other end was low, careful, and spoke in the specific cadence of someone choosing each word like they were crossing a river on stepping stones. "Kong Doyoon." "Yes. You don't know me." A pause. "But I know your father. And I know what your family has been building." Another pause, longer this time, weighted differently. "There are more districts, more cities, more children, and there are people who do not want that work to continue." Doyoon sat very still. "Who is this?" he asked. But the line was already dead. Down the hall in the kitchen, Haeun was helping Taehyun cheat at a card game, and laughing loudly enough that the sound carried through the whole east wing. Do-yoon looked at his phone for a long moment. Then he got up, walked to his door and locked it. To be continued. You just experienced Black Silk Stories, where Afro-Korean worlds collide, children rewrite the rules, and love looks like locked doors and headless dolls and fathers who answer on the second ring. If this story found you, it was meant to. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, leave a comment below and do not go anywhere. The Kong triplets are only getting started, and so are we.